Yeah, live and exclusive cricket returns to talkSPORT next week. England are in the West Indies for 3 one-days and 5 T20s, and you'll hear live and exclusive ball-by-ball commentary over on talkSPORT 2. This Sunday it gets underway, the first ODI from Antigua, 12:30pm. John Norman, our cricket correspondent, has joined us. Hello, John.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good, thank you. We've been... So, how are you feeling about this tour? I mean, it comes hot on the heels of the World Cup, so some things to prove for some of the players. A few different faces in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, sport is cyclical, isn't it? So we've kind of experienced the worst, and now it's, in a strange way, England stinking the World Cup out makes this series more interesting. Because I think if they'd knocked everyone aside, they'd be heading to the Caribbean, they would have arrested everybody, and you'd be thinking, okay, well, you know, they're clearly better than West Indies, who didn't even make the World Cup. And that's pretty much it. But of course, so much of the narrative that surrounds the white ball team is, of course, centred around that horrendous World Cup back in 2015. And we all know the story. Yeah. You know, Ian Morgan chatting to Brendan McCullum after England had been walloped and he'd just been installed as captain, and then essentially decided and was given the power to do it his way. 4 years later, of course, thanks to boundary countback, England beat New Zealand in the final. It makes a great book. There's plenty of them written. And so I suppose it's like the start of the season, isn't it? If you're a football fan, you're kind of,
Yeah, it's the start of a new cycle.
Exactly. And that's what this series is about. And of course, it's taking place in a part of the world which, it's bucket list stuff, really, to go and watch cricket in the Caribbean. And of course, it conjures up so many images. And of course, coming up against a team in the West Indies that themselves are desperately hoping that they've drawn a line in the sand and they can also start to move onwards and upwards.
Yeah, they're often better at home as well.
Yeah.
They've got a terrific record against England. I mean, in red ball stuff, England haven't beaten them since Steve Harmison back in 2003-04. They haven't beat them in a red ball series for 20 years. White ball stuff got a bit of a better record, but this is a callow-looking England side. Yes, there's some real talent in there, but actually, there's a lot of questions to be asked about this white ball side in 50-over cricket, and it's not actually that obvious from the outside, where those answers are gonna come.
Are the Windies a better T20 team than a 50-over team, John, would you say?
Yes, they are. They've obviously got more recent success in 2020 cricket, 2 times champions back in 2016. They haven't really done anything in 50-over cricket for a long, long time. You also see this I don't know if phenomenon is the right word, but essentially you still see the bigger name players kind of sitting out ODI cricket. But they'll be back for the T20. So the side is actually stronger in T20 than it is in ODIs. And when you switch format, as per England, the narrative changes. So you switch format, so it's 3 ODIs, then 5 T20s. So, of course, the T20 section of this series, well, everything's rosy in the garden because, of course, England are the champions. They won the T20 World Cup a year ago. They're defending it in 6 months' time in the Caribbean and America. So that in itself is interesting because, of course, they need to get their team in place to go on and hopefully make a more successful defence of their T20 title than they did of their 50-over trophy.
Yeah. America, we must do a show from there.
America,
wow, I mean, can you imagine?
That's going to be good.
Alan.
I'd love to do that.
I mean, the time difference isn't great for breakfast, but for a 1 till 4 afternoon show, I'd say it would be almost ideal.
Pretty good timing, I'd say. Well said, John. So we had the IPL auction. Few England players that had done very well before missed out, and Harry Brook was among them. He didn't have the best of times there, but we've seen a few miss out.
Yeah, well, the auction itself, I think, is on the 19th.
Right.
This is kind of the team.
This is picking up, yeah.
They're almost shedding skin at
That's
the moment.
right, yeah. Retentions.
Exactly.
Right, yes.
But yeah, Harry Brook was one of the players that has been let go. Ben Stokes, of course, has stepped away from the IPL this year. Joe Root as well. Neither of whom really featured last year anyway. Harry Brook had a strange old time. He essentially put together a succession of single-digit scores, then hit a century, kind of criticised the Indian support base a little bit in a way that he didn't intend, but possibly that's how it came across, and then didn't score another run. So, it wasn't exactly how it didn't exactly go how he intended. But you see that, don't you? And also, I mean, these guys play so much cricket. they have to have a drop off at some point. It's impossible for them to churn out performances 12 months a year. And unfortunately for Harry, it just seemed to be that the IPL was that occasion. And I mean, that kind of brings us on to a point that I wanted to make here, and that is the schedule. Cricket Collective this week, following on podcast, had James Harris, the PCA chief. Now, I'm sure you noticed that the scheduling was announced for next year, the county championship, the 100, the 50 over stuff, the T20 blast. And he came out and said, look, this is, again, unsustainable. Well, let's have a little listen, actually, to what he had to say, because he actually just, Harmy's sitting there and he's going, hang on, I come from Durham. Well, we had to drive for every single game. It took hours on end. But let's just have a little listen to what James Harris had to say just about how essentially the cricket schedule works if you're playing for a county like, I don't know, Glamorgan or Durham.
There's been changes to the schedule, since that point, the 100 being the most obvious thing where we more or less took August out and we pushed everything else kind of around that. I mean, look, just to run you through one of the examples certainly from a Glamorgan point last year, one of the weeks, or one of the little bits around, where these kind of competitions did overlap. We'd have played a T20 in Cardiff on a Friday night. We'd have spent Saturday driving from Cardiff to Durham to play 4 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We spent Thursday driving from Durham to Chelmsford to play a T20 on Friday. We spent Saturday driving home to get a T20 on Sunday at Glamorgan. We then went back to the Oval. We went back to Cardiff. And there's too many bits that right now don't work for, keeping people fit, keeping people healthy, having the best product on the field, and ultimately showcasing the game that we love in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's
pretty punishing, isn't it?
Well, that's asking for trouble, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is.
And it's not a problem that is unique to the times that we live in, because that's always been the way. They used to play a 3-day game with a 1-day game in between it, and sometimes you'd have to go and play that 1-day game in the other half of the country and then get back for day 4 or day 3 of that county championship game. But essentially, if you're trying to create a product that is a quality one, doesn't really sound like the way to go.
The World Cup wasn't quality. We all know that. There's just too much cricket. I mean, looking up today, it's sort of heart sinker, really. The T10 in Abu Dhabi. Who needs this? There is too much. It's TV's fault, isn't it? Because there's such a demand for cricket.
Well, it is. But one of the problems that I cannot quite work out is essentially international cricket. Of course, if you're an England cricket fan, you're going to be primarily, and there'll be a bigger audience when England play. But when India play Australia, say, or when South Africa play West Indies or Pakistan, there is an interest in that because, of course, it is linked indirectly to England's fortunes. With T20 domestic stuff, because the games, the teams, the kits, the players are all so interchangeable, there is absolutely no appeal outside of the country itself. So that in itself is a massive problem, because you're going from a position where you'd have, say, 12 months a year of international cricket, which is all linked up and relevant to everybody, to a situation where you're essentially watching the same players play for different teams in crazy clothing, and the only difference is whether it's May or April, essentially.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's Jason Royce hit 71 in a 10-over innings. I mean, it's incredible, but
no one.
But he'll do it. But he'll do exactly the same thing for another team in another country in 2 months' time.
Yeah. So, John, all gets underway Sunday.
It does.
You'll be.
Goffey will be back.
Good.
He'll be
excellent.
back in the building on Wednesday. So I'll try and get him to swing by and say hello. Mark Butcher's involved. I think he's chatting to you guys tomorrow.
Excellent.
Obviously Harmy's involved as well. And we're going to have plenty of West Indies talent, and should be absolutely fantastic. Head over to we've got a cricket YouTube channel, of course. So you can, if you can't access your DAB, you can follow it on there, and there'll be plenty of content as well, and everything will be wrapped up neatly and available via the following on podcast feed.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. We look forward to it. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. There we are. That's John Norman there, our cricket correspondent. And we'll have a chat with Mark Butcher tomorrow in the build-up. One of our commentary team, as we said, gets underway Sunday, 12:30, and you'll be able to listen to that. That's 3 one-dayers and the 5 T20s live and exclusive on talkSPORT 2. Paul
Hawksby and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.